You're insane. You know that. The captain mumbled, scratching his forehead in nervous reproach. He was sitting on the deck of his ship as a tall young man stood before him wearing a cloak and hood. He could barely make out the young man's face, but it seemed young and with wild hair to hide his mysterious eyes. The young stranger looked rather out of place standing aboard his ship, but then again, something about this man told the captain he'd stick out anywhere he went. The young man just smiled, that same strange grin he had when he first approached him on the dock. Not insane. Just faithful, he answered. Same difference, son, the captain spat, standing up with a groan. Kid, these waters ain't what they used to be. It's storm season now, and with them pirates and sea serpents scouring the water, I ain't taking no chances on them now. You can try some other ship. Besides, this one's seen better days. The young man didn't move from his spot, seemingly gazing into the captain's very soul. I said beat it, you brat. How about an arrangement? The young man replied. Take me across the sea, and I'll pay you double the usual rate. It ain't about money, lad. It's about security. I ain't taking no chances with pirates and monsters. The storms be bad enough without them, but with them? No sailor worth his salt would... It is imperative that I get across the sea to the town of Tartan, the young man explained. I've been called there, and I will not delay. He walked closer to the ship captain and held out a small pouch of gold coins. I'll pay you for the journey and the expenses. And as for the dangers ahead, I can personally assure you that no harm will befall this ship while I'm aboard it. You got some divine providence, son, the captain chuckled. Do we have a deal, Captain? The young man asked. The captain stared a moment and then shook his head. There was something so strange about this kid. There wasn't a hint of fear on his face, but just pure determination. The captain felt a sense of something else as well, a weight that the boy carried. He then glanced at the sky and smelled the spray of the salty sea air. He stretched his arms and finally took the money from the boy. All right, it's a deal. Guess I'd rather die at sea anyway. You will not die, Captain, the boy answered assuredly, and I'll further compensate you when we reach Tartan. Sure thing, lad. All right, we're shoving off, the captain bellowed. The crew that had been mingling around looked up in surprise and suddenly leapt into action, running to undo the ropes and to hold the boat off the dock, to release the sails and to catch the headwind. The captain walked to his post at the stern of the ship to man the helm. He glanced out and smiled. The sea was a grand but harsh mistress. He'd known it since he was a child, and he'd sailed its waters as a fisherman long before a ferrying craft. Once he'd even been in a naval fleet and sailed all over the oceans. But he'd never seen the seas quite like this. A few weeks ago, pirates began frequenting these waters and attacking lonely vessels without reservation. There had also been no shortage of sightings of strange monsters beneath the waves, waiting to plunge all unwary ships into the depths. And worse yet, storm season was upon them, and sailing under the conditions of a fierce maelstrom was nothing short of reckless. All common sense told him this was suicide. But that kid, he had been so confident. The way he spoke and the look in his eyes seemed to radiate a sense of power. It was as if he already knew the dangers ahead before he'd even boarded the ship, and yet the dangers meant nothing to him. He looked out and saw the strange young man standing on the bow of the ship, looking out at the ocean beyond. What's our heading, Captain? One of the men shouted. Tartan, he shouted back. If the winds stay on our side, we'll be there by midday tomorrow. Let's get our bearings and head to the north-northeast. Sir, are you sure about this? The man whispered. I don't trust this wind. I think a storm's coming on its heels. Aye, I agree. But with any luck, we'll outrun it. That young man seems to think the dangers are meaningless, so let's just hope he's right. You think he's a shaman or something, Captain? It's possible, the captain replied. And if he is, we might just be in luck. Seen a lot of them shamans before, and they always manage to pull some bizarre stuff out of their arse. He gripped the helm and began to turn it towards the eastern sky. Let's hope it's the same this time. Storm clouds descended upon the boat in the night, and like a thief, silent and unwanted, they began battering the ship. The darkness of the sky became even more foreboding and wicked as thunder clapped and lightning cut the sea. Rain fell in sight, debilitating sheets that brought the men to their knees. The boards of the ship seemed to creak under the weight of the downpour. Men screamed and ran for cover, trying hard to keep the ship from tipping as the waves became furious, growing like hungry beasts and smashing against the wooden deck until men slipped and stumbled about. Two nearly fell overboard as they battled to bring the sail back up. The captain cursed under his breath as he battled the furious ocean. This was his punishment, the price to pay for his faith in that lunatic below deck. And where was he now? Where was that fool who claimed he would get us across the sea in one piece? Damn him! Damn him! Bring that useless guest up here this instant, the captain roared. If we're sinking, I want him to see what his determination brought us. The crew nodded their agreement and ran down to fetch the young man. The captain turned his attention back to the helm and struggled with all his might to hold it in place as another monster wave smashed into the port of the ship, sending his crew scattering along the deck like fruits. Here he is, Captain, one shouted, dragging the man up onto the rainy deck. He was no longer wearing his hooded cloak. He was half naked, revealing strange tattoos all over his body and wild hair that looked uncombed and unkempt. The captain glared at him and then turned to his men. Throw him overboard, the captain shouted. Show him how merciful this sea is that he thought could be so underestimated. The men grabbed the young man by the arms, who yanked himself free of them forcefully. Why are you trying to kill me? The young man asked. The journey isn't over. It is for you, the captain bellowed, battling the helm again. I warned you, brat. I told you what waited for us on these waters, but no, you insisted we come. You were so sure of what was waiting for us. Serves me right for trusting some shaman. Now get the hell off my ship. Captain, what did you think would happen when I asked you to go with me on this journey? The man asked. Did you think the dangers and the trials would just vanish because a shaman was on board? Did you really assume that the evils and terrors of this world would shrink back because of my presence? The crew for a moment stared at the man dumbfounded, unable to understand his implication. You mean you knew we'd be hit by a storm? Not that I knew, but that I didn't let that possibility stand in my way, the man answered. The presence of danger does not vanish simply because we wish it to go away. We're always confronted by trials and threats, but it is by faith that we preserve. You, Captain, have faith in your crew and your ship, which is why even now you fight the storm with all you have, believing even now that there's a chance to survive it. If you were assured of our death, you wouldn't be standing so defiantly now. I see genuine faith and determination in your own eyes, Captain, and that is commendable. The captain had no answer to the boy and simply glared at him in disbelief. I have faith in something far greater than a ship. The young man walked away from the shock-stricken crew and walked onto the bow of the ship and stared out at the hurricane before him. He closed his eyes, and for a moment it appeared that the storm would simply whisk him away in the wind. But then it happened. Captain, look! The boy was glowing. His eyes opened to reveal glowing light, and his tattoos also seemed to ignite like fire. The weight that the captain felt before was back again, and it was overwhelming. The boy held out his hands and spoke to the winds. My master, blessed be your name and power. You brought me this far and shall see me even further. I ask of thee to aid me. Grant me your power and blessing so that this obstacle may stand aside by your will. He then held out his hands and began to spread them apart, as if brushing away a pair of curtains on a window. And as he did, the clouds began to dissipate, and the thunder's roar seemed to dim somehow. The waves that once were as high as the ship's mast fell back in fear of the man who stood upon the bow. And the bow moved his body in a fluid-like manner, and the sea responded by pushing the boat further and faster. The wind, which once seemed all but uncontrollable, now turned its attention to the sail and pushed it like a giant's hand toward the exit of the storm. The men said nothing. They did nothing. They simply stared in awe at the divine power they were witnessing. What did you do? One man cried. It's sorcery. No, he's a shaman. I've never seen a shaman do that. The men murmured and hummed their disbelief as the moon reappeared in the sky above. The storm clouds divided and pushed aside to allow the ship to pass through. Captain. The shaman spoke up so the captain could hear him, who was now standing jaw-dropped. Having faith does not mean that trials don't come. Rather, faith is having the strength to confront the trial and overcome them. What are you, lad? He asked. I'm simply a nomad, he answered, and it was not by my power that the storm was brought under control, but by the one Spirit, the one whom I serve. While my faith is in him, there's no storm I won't overcome. The captain gazed at the stranger in disbelief, but then his open mouth turned to a smile. You're something else, kid. Call it faith if you like, but I still say it's outstanding, the captain answered. I'm sorry for trying to throw you off the ship earlier. Nomad smiled and gave a polite bow before walking back toward the hatch to go below deck. "I'll take my leave now, Captain," he explained. "I'm afraid I'm not as familiar with sailing as you are, so I'll leave this in your capable hands. But wake me if anything should change." As he descended, the crew just stared after him, murmuring about how incredible the sight they'd just seen was. However, the dangers were not past, and the captain knew this. He might end up waking the sleeping Nomad sooner rather than later, but for now it was enough that the storm was no longer a factor. "All right, men, look alive. Let's get back underway. No telling how long this storm's gonna stay back." "Aye, sir," the crew shouted, running back to their posts to continue the journey. The storm did not come back to bear. Instead, it stayed at a distance well into the early morning. With the aid of the wind, the crew had been able to return to their course in incredible time. But something was still eating at the captain. If this storm was holding back for them, then there would likely be others who took this opportunity. He had a watchman out on the crow's nest looking out for anything that appeared suspicious or unwanted. The evening had been uneventful, but with the light of day dawning, there was a likelihood that something might be spotted this time. "Anything!" the captain shouted. There was a pause and then suddenly a terrified scream. "Ship coming at us! Look aft!" The captain turned, and to his horror there was indeed a coming ship not far, and its flags were not friendly. There was a sense of dread coming off of it, and the captain could feel his blood turning cold. "It's pirates, Captain!" "We should abandon the cargo. They won't chase us if they don't have anything..." "We should abandon the cargo. They won't chase us if they don't have anything to steal," one man offered, but the captain looked at him a moment and pondered such a notion. It would be easy to avoid conflict by just throwing it all overboard. But then he remembered a single youth standing on the bow of his ship, and with nothing but faith and a wave of his hands, a storm bowed to his whim. "The hell I will," the captain snarled. "I ain't gonna be outstaged by a young pup like him. They want this ship. They gotta take it over our dead bodies, boys."